Your higher self is one of the most potent energies that there is. We often want to work with gods and angels and other spirits instead, but our higher self is what's needed to connect to those energies. Gods, angels, and Orisha, for example, are tools that we use to direct the actions of our higher self. Not taking care of it can cause us to misuse and misinterpret the messages of those tools. Proper cleansing and refreshing of the higher self is a way to stay connected to its guidance so you can be in alignment with your personal destiny. A regular head cleanse is one way to honor your higher self. For this cleanse, you will need 1 quart of goat's milk, 1 quart of almond milk, 1 quart of coconut milk, 1 quart of river water, and a small piece of black soap. Mix all the ingredients in a large container and allow the black soap to liquefy. Leave this mixture in moonlight overnight. Wash your head the next sunrise and cover your head with a white cloth for the rest of the day. To learn more about spiritual cleansing, go to saduluhouse.com/events to register for the online live webinar February 8th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Greetings, peace everyone. Welcome back to another segment of Chief Speaks. I am Kim, one of your co-hosts, and we'll have our insight from Chief Yuya a bit later on in the show. So before we get started, again, I want to welcome you back, and I wanted to make a few quick announcements for those of you who may be new to the show. So just to introduce you to some of the services that we offer and where you can go to find those services, I want to start off with annunation.org. And annunation.org is where you can go to sign up for our monthly newsletter. So if you want to kind of stay in the loop of what's going on or to find out about new products and services or any of the things that we may have going on, you want to make sure you go to annunation.org to get signed up for that. You can also find links to all of our other websites on that page as well. We have SaduluHouse.com, which is the class component of Annunation, and this is where you can go to sign up for the Anu spiritual training, as well as the free introduction course on Orisha as well. You can also find all of our monthly webinar information there. So for this month, we've already had it. It was on meditation, and thank you for all of you who signed up for that and attended. For February, we're going to be talking about spiritual cleansing. So if you'd like to sign up for that, you can do that now, as well as sign up for any of the other monthly webinars that we'll have for the year of 2016. You don't have to wait each month to sign up. You can go ahead and register now. So you would find those at saduluhouse.com/events if you'd like to go ahead and register. Enlightenment and transformation.com is our media component of our new nation. And this is where you can go to find our blogs about the shows, and there's a forum there if you would like to sign up and discuss some of the shows if you have any questions or comments you'd like to make. And you'll also find like all of the old shows, all of the old, the archive shows. That's Masterminds Monday, Anua Safo, Thunderground Thursday, and Foundational Friday. You can find all of those on enlightenmentandtransformation.com. And you'll also be sent to our YouTube channel, which is Enlightenment and Transformation TV. So, of course, you can find all of the shows there as well. And make sure you click the subscribe button. And so feel free to subscribe and share all the videos, okay? We also have osirislife.com, and this is the kind of self-help area of our new nation. So if you need a little bit more one-on-one help, or more help than, say a reading once a year or so, you can go there to have rituals done on your behalf, monthly coaching, more frequent readings if you need it. You'll have 3 packages that you can choose from, and each package describes the services that you'll be signing up for. So this is a monthly service, but remember, go to osirislife.com if that's what you need. Oh, excuse me. We also have @alpha-omega-store.com, and this is where you can go to find all of our products, from DVDs to books, to all of our spiritual supplies. So if you've gotten a ritual from Chief Yuya, or if you've gone on our website and gotten some of the free rituals, here you can go to find all of those ingredients that you may need for any of those rituals. So make sure you take advantage of that. The prices are great because, and then if like you're in a remote area, kind of like where I am, some of these things may be kind of hard to find. So make sure you go to @alpha-omega-store.com to find that. All right, so now we're going to cut to a couple of commercials and we'll be back with Chief Yuya's Insight for the Strong. Thanks for tuning in.
The Alpha Omega Store is a family-owned and operated premier online store serving as your one-stop shop for all of your spiritual and self-development needs. At the Alpha Omega Store, we offer you hard-to-find spiritual and ritual supplies, books, DVDs, personal development services, monthly specials, international shipping, and more. From spiritual supplies to business products and services, our mission is to provide you with the tools that will put you on your road to success. Purchase your quality products and services today at alphaomegastore.com. Bring yourself to a place of spiritual and holistic balance with exclusive life design services at osirislife.com. At Osiris Life, we offer our members exclusive one-on-one instruction, including 3 monthly service level options to choose from, monthly spiritual consultations, monthly podcasts and videos, custom tailored development plans, spiritual work done on your behalf, life coaching and support, and working solutions with real results. Awaken to your personal greatness and purchase your membership package today at osirislife.com. And now, back to our segment.
So self-actualization is actualizing the mission and idea of the soul. In order for new life to come, the old life has to rock. We've realized the self is actually that higher entity, that which controls God. You're supposed to birth yourself into these realities and then kill yourself out of those realities. That's the only escape from the matrix. It's that everything here is dying. Everything here is corrupted. Everything, even your beautiful sunset, is a corruption of the real sun. What is your body to your soul? A vehicle of travel. What are the things that you do that are not for money? So we speak about the independent phenomenon of self-actualization. No rules. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm also going to show you the depth of my power. Welcome. Greetings. Welcome everyone to Chief Speaks on High Frequency Radio, as well as Enlightenment and Transformation. I am Chief Yuya, and I'm bringing you the message / insight for this Sunday's Chief Speaks. And I personally want to welcome everyone. I know it was already done, but thank you everyone who's tuning in from the phone lines, everyone who's listening from YouTube at youtube.com/Enlightenment and Transformation TV, as well as my High Frequency family and my Enlightenment and Transformation family. There seems there has been like a blending of the two stations almost. I get a lot of the high frequency people now listening to a lot of our segments and vice versa. A lot of my listeners have been going to high frequency for law information and so forth, and so on. So I want to just welcome everyone, and I want to say peace to you all. And just, I will that your dawning is going well and that you're having a peaceful dawning. And just remember that you can have peaceful moments or a peaceful spirit in the midst of all kind of chaos and all kind of confusion. The peace sits at the center, and that's the peace that you don't want rocked. The happiness and the bad times, they come and go, they're transient. they're not nearly as important as a lot of times we think they are. But I definitely will that you all have had a peaceful, strong, and that you're having a peaceful dawning and will have a peaceful day. Well, as you all know, that we've been doing thematic segments, and this month's theme has been on progress, in particular success and progress. And we covered success in the first two segments of this month, and I actually neglected. I didn't realize we had 5 Sundays, so I would have probably maybe coordinated it a little bit differently, but it's okay. So we're dealing with progress right now, and the concept of progress we covered in our last segment, just really dealing with what progress is, how do we spot progress, maybe what some of our movements towards progress should be. Well, in this segment, what we're going to deal with is some of the ways that we block our progress. And it's important, I know a lot of times we want information that we feel like just builds us, information that just adds on to what it is that we're already doing. And that's important. But just because we get negative information doesn't mean that we're getting harmful information. Just like when someone gives us negative criticism, doesn't mean that they're giving us harmful criticism, because sometimes things need to be taken away, just like things need to be added. And in fact, you can't really add without taking away, and you can't really take away without adding. So it really is a balancing procedure anytime you're taking something away. But negativity is important, and you need negativity just as much as you need positivity. You need positivity just as much as you need negativity. So I try to really give both. I know sometimes it may seem like, well, he's always telling us what not to do, or he's always telling us the signs of what people do when they're exhibiting maybe some unhealthy behaviors. But that's also so that you can extract those elements away from you. So sometimes individuals have a little difficulty hearing that type of information, because it seems like if it's negative, it's automatic concept. Or when we're dealing with that thought and that modality of just community building and community, self-community building or self-community progress, one of the things that we want to look at is, how do we stop the progress? How do we undermine ourselves? How do we cut our own legs from under us? I mean, obviously there's a lot of different terms and phrases that we use to describe this type of behavior. So I'm going to focus on self-sabotage, but you can really call it anything you want. The bottom line is, we're trying to progress to a certain place, and what we do, instead of progressing, we find a way to cut it short. And a lot of times, sadly, you'll find this in groups, where people will join your group just to sabotage it, or they will join whatever it is you're doing. Oh, what you doing? I'll help you. Oh, you're cutting your lawn? I'll help you. Children do that all the time, just to be mischievous. And sometimes we don't outgrow that mischief. But I want to really deal with some of the reasons for this. And it's something that I used to think about a lot, because being a priest, one of the things that I have to do often is study the mythology and the corpus of information and the corpus of spiritual code and law that comes along with the traditions that I've been initiated into. And many of the traditions that I'm a part of, I've noticed this constant theme that you would find in different stories, where someone came to a priest or came to an elder with an issue, and the elder would give them a prescription, and then the individual would not follow through with the prescription. So for me, reading or listening, because a lot of what I learned originally when I first started this was mainly oral, and then I would be the one writing, but then sometimes I couldn't write. I would just have to just sit and listen and find ways to relate to the story, so that way I could remember them, because there was so many of them. And especially a lot of my early teachers, English was like their 5th language, and I was just learning the language maybe that they were speaking. So I had to find a lot of ways to put different images and colors and symbols in my mind, so I'm like, man, so I wouldn't forget. Because one of the things too, when you have an instructor or a leader or an elder that you respect, you don't ask them to repeat themselves. You don't ask them to repeat themselves. You know, you make sure when they're speaking, you're all ears. You give them that respect. Hint, hint. So, yeah. So, you know, listening to these stories, I always saw this theme of like a person being given a prescription and not following through with the sacrifice, or not following through with the actual procedures that were given. And I always was kind of curious as to, well, why am I reading this? Like, why is this important, or why am I hearing this? Why is this even a part of the corpus of information? You know, which you would think that maybe you'd only have to say it once. If you don't do what you're told, this is going to happen, you know? And then I started to see that the concept or the idea of self-sabotage is ancient. You know, individuals have been messing themselves up for a very long time. So basically, there's a couple of reasons why we all do this, myself included. I mean, I'm sure if I sat and really thought, and there's probably certain areas in my life where I always do wrong. Flesh typically will speak to a lot of failure, okay? So the corruption of the flesh speaks to failure. So what happens is that we become very accustomed and very used to failing. So because we become accustomed to that, that becomes our culture. We develop a culture of failure. And then what happens is when we start moving towards something that looks like it's progressing towards victory, in order to maintain a semblance of what we are most familiar with, we will create failure from it. We will turn it into a failure, so that way we can say, okay, this is what I'm used to. This is what I'm accustomed to. And this is what I'm most comfortable with. Because sometimes we begin to confuse our failure for victory. So we start saying, well, I'm this type of person. So as long as every one of my situations and every one of my activities equate and end up with me still being that type of person, we think that it was a success. So when we start doing something that's equating to victory, we rebel against it. It becomes an offense to the ego, and then we turn it into what we're used to, which is failure. So it's like a topsy-turvy type of thing. And you know, you've heard me say before, what has now become the norm is that which is dysfunctional. And what is abnormal is that which is functional. So like nature and things that are natural and absorbing and enjoying the natural environment has now become abnormal. And to do things that are sterile and inorganic and that are anti-life has become the norm. You know, so it's the same way when we're trying to progress through life. A lot of times our failures become the norm, and we create that norm in everything that we do. And when we start getting that feeling of success, because we're so unused to it, right? We turn it into what we're used to. And then we say, okay, this feels good. And then when it fails, we say, well, I knew that was going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to work. I knew it was going to fail, right? So then we even feel a degree of like victory in knowing that it was going to fail. But we knew it was going to fail because we knew we were going to make it fail, you see? So that's one of the reasons why a lot of times as individuals, we end up self-sabotaging. Now, one of the other reasons is a lot of times because of some of the failures in our life, or some of our inability or our ignorance of how the world works, we become control freaks. You find people who a lot of times are the most controlling are also the most ignorant. They come together hand in hand. And one of the reasons that they come together, or they flow within each other, in and out of one another, is because ignorance needs an environment, a controlled environment to exist, because the actual makeup and the composition of the universe is forever expansion. So expansion requires knowledge. So as we take on more knowledge, the universe expands, because it has to accommodate our new curiosity. It's just like when you have a child, right? you see how quickly you go through your books sometimes, your children's books, right? You have books on the shelves and you'll say, why don't you go do something? Maybe they'll be acting up. And you say, go read a book. And they'll say, I read all my books already. So then what do? You go pull one of the books from your shelves. Here. And it's probably one they really can't read right now. And then, a month later, they read it. And then what do you have to do? You have to expand the universe. You may have to take a trip to the bookstore yourself to expand your whole universe or omniverse or sphere of wisdom in order to accommodate the growth of those that you take care of and those that you love, which we call children. So that would be, again, another example of a closed failure, So when we really look at like self-sabotage, again, we figured out that it comes from a sense of comfort with failure, but it also comes from a sense of desiring control, constant control, you see. And through our control, we're always going to fail because your control mechanisms are typically a product of your five senses, because your five senses tell you that you can control your external environment, but they don't let you in on a secret that you can't control the spiritual ecosystem. You can't control the spiritual kingdom with senses, not with the five senses. It doesn't work that way. You can feed the spiritual kingdom with your senses. You can feed it with your anger. You can feed it with your touch. You can feed it even with the breath from your mouth. You can feed it with your vision, which is the attention. When you give your focus to something, you can feed it and then let it do what it does, which is still beyond our understanding with our finite flesh brains. We spend all this time listening to people like me and reading books and meditation to try to understand a little bit, what exactly is it that you're doing there? How did you make it rain? How does a plant grow? Grass. What's the deal with grass? And why are so many pieces so different? Why do things come out so different? Snowflakes. What's up with that? So sometimes we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how it does what it does. But the truth is, we realize that we can only feed it to let it do what it does and give it a target, give it a trajectory. Okay, so often we fail reaching our mark by trying to control what those spirits and energies are going to do. Those of you who are readers, those of you who are priests and priestesses who are listening to me right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're dealing with a client and they're trying to control the entire session. Those are the clients that I cut short. And I said, no, we're good. Here's your money. Go to somebody else. Or like they'll say, you may do a reading, right? And they'll say, it feels like you're holding something back. And I tell people, I'm always holding something back. Of course. I'm probably telling you 20%, if that, of what I see here. You're not ready for all of it. And they always say the same thing. You know what I'm talking about. I'm ready. You don't know me like that. Yes, I do. You don't know I do. And you're not ready. So then sometimes you give them a little sprinkle. You get them a little taste. And what do? They trip out. They'll say, oh, no. They'll get upset, or it'll just get stupid, right? So you learn over the years how to withhold and give what they need to hear in order to get to the next part. Like I always say, doing spiritual work for other people is 20% the actual divine work, 80% psychology. Most of what you're doing is psychological, because once you're tapped in and you're in the groove and you have your spiritual forces around you and they're communicating with you and they're working with you on a constant and not just daily but a continual basis, to get answers is pretty easy. They come very quickly. But how do I convey it? That becomes a difficult thing, especially when you're working with someone and you can look at them and tell that they're a self-sabotager. And they're just looking for that one word that you're going to say that's going to make them say, you know what, forget it. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Some of you are those people. Okay, so, aside from the control mechanisms that a lot of times individuals may employ There's some other pieces that really equate to just a continual process of self-sabotage. One of them is a low sense of self-worth. A lot of times individuals can't see themselves as being the one worthy of success because, again, it's that satanic aspect. And why do I say satanic? I've broken this down before, but real quick, because it is through our ego that we start to associate ourselves with things that would make us guilty, or our concepts of guilt, which are always associated with the history. So, for example, you may say, okay, I'm doing some type of work spiritually, or I want to progress towards having a child. And this could be a male or a female. You may say, I want to have a child. And then what kicks in is the thought, well, what about the child that you aborted? What about the relationship or the poor relationship you have with your child from a divorce, or the children you already have? Do you really think the universe is going to bless you with another child? You see, so the guilt mechanisms begin to kick in as a result of our connection with a history. The history is documented and recorded through the mind, or the brain rather, which where the ego operates out of. So the satanic aspect comes in because it's only through time. Now you know that we get the term Satan, or satyr, from Saturn, where we also get Saturn, again, being one of the earlier deities, was originally called Kronos. Kronos is where you get chronology, or time. So we start to understand that this concept of time, or chronology, is something that exists in the brain. It's something that exists as a part of as an egoic human function. So as an egoic human function, time, which also is represented by the masculine energy, just like space is represented by the feminine energy, this concept of time is something that exists within the flesh. That's why Satan, or Satyr, or Satyr also connects with the term satisfy, or satisfaction. And it's the flesh that seeks for satisfaction. It's the humanity, or the human body, or the mind, that seeks for satisfaction. But the trap is that the mind can never be satisfied, just as the flesh is never satisfied. So this is a concept of chronos, or a concept of time in history. So it's our history that brings the guilt. Because right in the moment, right now, whatever it is that you desire, whatever it is that you're visualizing, or that you mentally want to progress and achieve, if I say, are you worthy of it? You'll say yes. But then in the split second, it could be a nanosecond, you'll rewind and you'll say, but. And remember we spoke about the but, the great but, last time, which is that fall into the flesh, and into consequence. But I did this. But I'm this type of person. But I haven't earned it. But I haven't done this. You see, so it takes us to a connection with our history. So a lot of times we'll use that distorted notion or idea of history as a means to sabotage what it is that we want to do in life. We'll use our distorted perception of what our history is and what our history is supposed to mean in regards to our progression, not realizing that we're supposed to progress through history and not become addicted to control mechanisms, not become addicted to failure and to these poor habits, which takes us really to the next thing: bad habits, right? So habits, as I expressed before in another show, I did a show, it was a Thunderground Thursday show. And the show, I believe it was Thunderground Thursday, I said believe, of habits. And I connected the idea for us of habits coming to, or coming from, haberdashery. So we understand that the habits are the things that we wear, they're the garments that we wear. But when we progress to the next stage in life, when we kick it up to the next level, when we go to the next level, what happens? We have to strip. We strip ourselves and we take on new garments. Here's an example. You'll find someone who is mentally disarranged. Often they have the same habits. In fact, if you change a habit, all HE double hockey sticks breaks loose. The habits have to stay exactly as they are. So it's the same thing when we have these poor and these bad habits. It's the stripping of such. Sometimes you see people who are living on the streets who have become mentally disordered because of their situations. They will wear the same exact thing every day, some of them, and you will find that despite the smell, the vomit, the urine, the feces, the smell that's on their clothes, they will continue to wear them because they're accustomed to these habits. And taking them off and stripping them, they don't like the feeling of feeling naked. Yeah, some people who go outside every day with a gun because they don't want to feel naked. When I was a young man, I used to keep a razor in my mouth all the time, no matter where I was. I mean, I'm in college, and I'm in a lecture, and I'm over here with this razor and playing with it in my mouth. Wherever I am, I'm at a lecture. I'm listening to Naeem Akbar somewhere. I'm listening to Automatics, flipping this razor around in my mouth, and without it, I felt nude. I felt uncovered. Until I had to grow beyond it and progress to the next level and spit the razor out and say, okay, now we're in a new space where maybe I don't need it. I'm around a different group of people who have better habits, who have better garments, and it caused me to look at my habits. It caused me to look at my garments and determine, am I wearing the proper uniform or the proper garments for the environment or to progress to the next environment? You see, so often it's also our bad habits that keep us from really going from point A to point Z, our actual destination, or maybe we can even say point Y, that progression right before we get there. Um, so a poor sense of self-worth, not really having a perception of who is worthy of progression, of progressing, not realizing that if you have the vision and you have the idea, then you're worthy. But in the same instance, sometimes our bad habits, which are part of what we spoke about, the first piece of really just being accustomed to failure. Sometimes we have habits of failure, and we have failing habits, and those failing habits become a part of our ecosystem. Like I said, even with the control, when you're trying to control the spiritual ecosystem, you can't. You can only control the fuel that you give to those systems, but you can't control how those systems do what they do. That's just not going to happen. You see, so in the same instance, sometimes our bad habits are our means of controlling what it is that our world will look like. And through that, we feel that we become empowered because we can stand in front of someone and say, this is what I do, this is what I am, this is how I do, and not realizing that's the crystallization and that's the vacuum, because the universe doesn't work like that. Like I said, the universe looks to expand, it looks to grow. In the same instance that when you have a child, they look to grow. You can't function completely within a controlled bubble and at the same time progress to new information, progress to a better life. This is where you a lot of times have the cognitive dissonance. You have individuals who will say, I want to live this type of life, but their habits express and lead them to a different type of life. And then when you start saying, okay, well, let me pull back that habit, let me strip that habit, what happens? No, leave me alone. You see, they rebel, they fight. The toxins start to come to the surface, and the toxins a lot of times are their bad habit defense mechanisms. So they'll begin to fight you, they'll disrespect you. They'll say the problem is with you. They'll say you don't understand them. You're not listening to them. You're too rough. You're too harsh. You don't speak in a way that would actually change them. They'll find a million and one things to not change. And those are the defense mechanisms that are incorporated by the bad habits. If you look at, again, I know I cite it sometimes, but the movie Inception, and you look at the defense force that was going through that individual's mind, that's what that defense force, it's hunting down those who would go in there and plant a new idea. It's trying to kill them. It comes that strong. So the same thing exists when we're self-sabotaging. Those mechanisms are just that strong. That's why a lot of times when you hear me on the shows, you'll hear me say things like, I'm not speaking to the individual, I'm speaking to the spirit. I'm speaking to that defense force, that when I say something and a person starts trying to cut me off, and I say, no, wait, listen. I know what's trying to cut me off, because inwardly, the essence of the person inwardly wants better, wants to change, wants to progress, wants to grow inwardly. but the mechanisms come and they put up the front. And you have to be strong enough to get through those mechanisms. That's the challenge. So, a lot of times it's the habits or the haberdashery. It's the garments or the clothing that we use as insulation from the environment. I used to always think it was so interesting how people would rush for umbrellas, or rush it, whether it's to shade them from the sun or to cover them from raindrops. And I thought it was always very interesting because we go through a lot of measures to keep ourselves from contacting the natural environment, to keep ourselves from adapting. We don't want a hint of cold on us. We're bundled up and wrapped around the face, the head, the ears. We even have the face mask, goggles, because we don't want one piece of cold air to touch us. Not realizing that we need that. Our body needs that change in order to adapt. So it's the same thing when you're progressing. A lot of times it's going to be a stripping of things around you. A lot of times you're going to have to expose yourself to the elementals of truth and information in order to adapt and strengthen yourself to go to the actual place that you want to progress to. You won't be able to make it. Think about a person who wants to live off a grid and grow their own food, but they have extreme food addictions. You see? So they're trying to go to a natural environment with food addictions. What's going to happen? They're either going to be constantly importing junk, or they're going to quit because they're going to become too irritable to be in that environment and they're going to leave. So there has to be a stripping first of some of those poor habits before they can even get to that place, because real food doesn't create cravings. Like I know, like was it White Castles? They say something the crave or bathe the crave or something to crave, but they talk about how people crave for White Castle burgers. And sometimes people crave for, I don't know, pizza, or people crave for candy or ice cream, but you never crave for a peach. You never crave for dinosaur kale. You're not going to have a craving, for a shiitake mushroom, because real food doesn't create that craving. It's only the fake stuff. So in the same instance, when you're trying to strip yourself of your bad habits in order to progress to a better place, truth in nature doesn't fight you the same way that a lie does, you see. So it is often the bad habits and the low self-worth working together and coupled with the control mechanisms that keep a person from progressing to the next place. There's another aspect that I wasn't going to speak on, but I'm gonna speak on it. I'm gonna bring it up. A lot of times it's a sick need for excitement that keeps us from progressing to the next level. I remember some years back, many years back, you had this real homoerotic fascination with the thug. And you would hear a lot of women say, I want a thug, I want a thug, right? So what happened is this desire for a thug created a complete neglect of the men who were doing the right thing. So then the men who were doing the right thing then had to posture themselves as thugs in order to get the females that they desired. And I'm making the distinction between females and women, because a real woman doesn't want a thug. She doesn't want to, be thrown and held over buildings and bridges by her ankles. I remember years ago, I had a friend, well, we're still friends to this day, but his house, like his family never let anyone inside the house. And I remember one night I dropped him off. We were somewhere and he let me, he's like, oh, come in. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm in my mind. So we're in the house and we get there, and like we were all athletes. So like, there's a lot of, like, on the walls, a lot of plaques and trophies and things like that from him and his brothers. But I'm noticing like all of these pictures that had no type of motif and no type of arrangement, right? So I'm looking at the walls and it like hit me, sometimes you get, because with me, I always get, it's the psychic ability really, but I get sometimes when I'm in an environment, the whole thing will play out. I'll get 10 years of history in like a second. And I said, your pops has anger issues, doesn't he? And he said, yeah, man, you should see the way he talks to my mother. And that's why I realized they don't let people inside the house. So I'm looking, I'm like, Yeah, your father likes to punch holes in the walls, huh? Because he had all these different little pictures of different sizes, and I'm like, okay, your mother's like must be bobbing and weaving every time she has to bring up a problem with a bill or something. She's got to do all of this. So, a lot of times it's the excitement that a woman may want or a man may want, because men do it more than women. A lot of times men will bypass a woman who has her stuff together for the one who's a project, because the project is more exciting. You see, so they'll sabotage their progression to something good, to going to the next level, to going to something better, because they want excitement. And again, the woman who's sitting there who's like, but wait a minute, I've been listening to Chief Yuya and taking our new spiritual training and doing the work and reading the books, and I'm ready to be a wife and to be a mother, to do things I'm supposed to do. She gets totally overlooked. And it's the one that's like picking up the phone like, yeah, what you want? And all that foolishness. That's the one that gets all the action, because sometimes we have this sick, twisted, perverted need for excitement, and progress and success and being on one accord is very boring, because innately we remember heaven was boring as, I was going to say HELL, but heaven was really boring because it was perfection. So when there was discord and corruption, when I started to fall into my physical form and become what's known today as a human, things got exciting. So sometimes we want to bring that corruption into our progressive movement. And it becomes a problem when we're doing things as a group. And you may have that one person that says, this is feeling too much like the divine. I need to bring some humanity into this. So they start to become a gremlin and sabotage everything. So sadly, a lot of times our self-sabotage mechanisms are just a result of wanting more excitement in our lives, wanting to mix it up a bit. And our idea of mixing it up again, because through failure, things get exciting, especially because a lot of times our failures are controlled failures. We're controlling them. So that controlled failure becomes the new excitement. And that's more exciting than being on one accord and progressing to the finish line. You see? So progress, a lot of times, again, is undermined by a sense of low self-worth, undermined by control mechanisms, undermined by our bad habits, undermined by a habitual sense of comfort with failure. And a lot of times undermined by a sick and twisted need for excitement and seeing corruption and failure as the excitement that we have to have all the time. And I understand it. I understand nobody wants to be bored. But if we have a respect for process, which a lot of times we don't, and a respect even for the process, I'll give you another piece of respect. A lot of times we don't have respect for the individuals who are bringing us through a process. So we mix it up. We bring our corruption in. A lot of times those are our guides and our leaders. And we're not taught the protocol of actually respecting them, of actually seeing them as what they're supposed to be, and silencing our bad habits, silencing our corruption. I've had students sometimes that come to me and say, well, I'm gonna let you know now, I'm gonna be a headache because I got this and you just got to be patient with me. And I'll tell them, like, then you can't be my student. You're not important. Why would I care to take myself through that stress? Do you think my life is that boring that I'm gonna now allow you to bring your dirt into my sacred space? Sometimes we don't understand that because we have this self-absorption that comes again through that bubble that we live in through our control mechanisms, which is the other point we build. So when we even go into a class to learn, we try to pull the instructor inside of our bubble and make them accommodate our sickness. And when they say, no, no, you can't come here like that, what do? We rebel. You don't understand me. You're not patient. You're not sensitive, or whatever else we try to come up with to satisfy the defense force. So the defense force says, yeah, and they lower their guns and they say, okay, good job, you did it. Good job. Now you can go back to hell. Because that's really what it is. And that's what I tell students who act up. You can stay in hell. I don't need you. I let the welfare feed you. You're not important to me. You're not special. Stop thinking that. And I know it sounds rough, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So even if I met the Messiah, he ain't special to me. You're your own Messiah. I am my own Messiah. So we all have our own work to do, and we shouldn't be trying to sabotage one another. That's really cruel. If you really think about it, it's a really cruel thing to do to a person. But so those different mechanisms, like I said, are a lot of times what is sabotaging our progression towards what we want. And we need to really be a lot more mindful of that going forward. So I wanted to thank everyone who's been leaving comments on the videos. I'm not going to say all your names, but I read all of them. I can even run some of them back to you right now, but I won't do that. But I want to thank you for everyone who's commented, who likes the videos, who shares the videos, which is very important too. But please subscribe to Enlightenment and Transformation TV. Blog Talk, click the follow button so you know, because like I said, this year we're going to be doing more impromptu shows. So that way you'll know when, oh, he just did a show or whatever, or Sister Kim or Sister Felicia or whomever. So definitely make sure that you're plugged in that way, all right? But I want to thank you for listening and for really just willfully processing some of the things I said. And like I said, even those who have presented themselves as guides to you, you have to understand a lot of times that we see you self-sabotaging a mile away. And we're not going to allow you to be a gremlin in our cipher. And a lot of times, if you choose not to see us because you have such thick blinders on your eyes that you refuse to see anyone and anything that's going to start stripping away the garments, you're only hurting yourself. So respect your teachers. Hint, hint. We're not just taking a break from phone calls for nothing. But we'll be back. We'll be back to the phone calls soon. But for right now, I need you guys to soak up some of this information, and then when we come back, the conversation will be better. I know it will be. But that has been our insight for this Chief Speaks. I want to thank you all for listening. I respect you all because I see you, and I honor you all, and I value you all. All right. So I say Habari Gani, Ankuja Seneb, Hotepu, Sawubona, for those of you who I will be seeing soon in Beshia or Kwaba, peace, all right, be strong, walk with beauty, walk with divine guidance and ancestral wisdom. This is Chief Yuya from the Anu Life Global Ministries, from Sadulu House, from Anu Nation, from OrishaReligion.com, signing out, saying, be strong, be powerful, and continue to progress. And stop running from the negativity. You need it to.
Your higher self is one of the most potent energies that there is. We often want to work with gods and angels and other spirits instead, but our higher self is what's needed to connect to those energies. Gods, angels, and Orisha, for example, are tools that we use to direct the actions of our higher self. Not taking care of it can cause us to misuse and misinterpret the messages of those tools. Proper cleansing and refreshing of the higher self is a way to stay connected to its guidance so you can be in alignment with your personal destiny. A regular head cleanse is one way to honor your higher self. For this cleanse, you will need 1 quart of goat's milk, 1 quart of almond milk, 1 quart of coconut milk, 1 quart of river water, and a small piece of black soap. Mix all the ingredients in a large container and allow the black soap to liquefy. Leave this mixture in moonlight overnight. Wash your head the next sunrise and cover your head with a white cloth for the rest of the day. To learn more about spiritual cleansing, go to saduluhouse.com/events to register for the online live webinar February 8th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern.